Hello everyone, and welcome back to another What If scenario. Today we're diving into a mind-bending question. What if the sun was smaller than the Earth? Sounds impossible, right? But let's imagine it for a moment. Before we begin, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and give this video a like, so you won't miss out on our future episodes with even more fascinating topics. Now, the Sun is about 109 times wider than Earth, and it contains 99.8% of all the mass in our solar system. It's basically the giant engine that powers life on our planet. But what if it shrank down, becoming smaller than Earth itself? Imagine looking up at the sky and seeing a tiny ball of light, no bigger than a city. The very balance of our solar system would collapse instantly. Without the sun's massive gravity, the planets wouldn't orbit the way they do now. Instead, Earth and its neighbors would drift off into the cold emptiness of space. Even more shocking, our source of light and heat would be reduced to almost nothing. The Earth would turn into a frozen world, where survival would be nearly impossible. But that's just the beginning. In the next part, we'll explore what our skies would look like, how ecosystems would react, and whether humanity could find a way to adapt. If the sun were smaller than the Earth, the first thing you'd notice is the sky. Our sun would no longer dominate it like a massive glowing disk. Instead, it would look more like a bright star, barely larger than Venus or Jupiter appear to us today. Daylight wouldn't really exist anymore. Instead, Earth would be bathed in a weak twilight, similar to the light of a full moon, but slightly warmer. Shadows would disappear, and everything would look dim and ghostly. Night and day would almost become meaningless. With such little light, the boundary between them would blur, leaving Earth in a permanent gloom. Our planet's weather systems, which depend on the sun's heat, would completely break down. Winds, rain, and storms would vanish because there would be no energy to drive them. And ecosystems, plants which rely on photosynthesis, would be the first victims. Forests would wither, crops would fail, and the food chain would collapse. Without plants producing oxygen and feeding herbivores, animals, and eventually humans would face a rapid decline in survival chances. But even if humans tried to adapt with technology, the biggest challenge would remain: the cold. Without a strong sun to keep Earth warm, global temperatures would plummet below freezing everywhere, turning oceans into ice and creating a frozen wasteland. If the sun became smaller than Earth, it wouldn't just affect light and heat. Its gravity would also shrink dramatically. Right now, the sun's enormous mass is what holds Earth and all the other planets in stable orbits. If that mass suddenly shrank, Earth would no longer be pulled tightly into orbit. Instead, our planet could drift away into deep space, becoming a rogue planet wandering without a star. Without the sun's gravitational anchor, the entire solar system would collapse. Planets like Mars, Venus, and Jupiter would scatter, moving in unpredictable directions. Moons could drift away from their planets, and asteroids would fly loose. In short, the delicate cosmic dance we call the solar system would fall apart. And what about tides? The sun plays a role in Earth's tides alongside the moon. With a tiny sun, those effects would nearly vanish. Oceans would freeze solid under the new icy conditions, but even before that, the lack of solar pull would mean calmer seas. Not that anyone would be around to enjoy them. To survive, humanity would have to rely on artificial light and heat sources, possibly moving underground or building massive energy domes powered by nuclear fusion or geothermal energy. Essentially, we'd need to replace the sun with our own technology to have any chance of survival. If the sun shrank smaller than Earth, cities and human civilization would face unimaginable changes. First, daylight as we know it would disappear. Instead of bright skies, we would live under eternal twilight or near-complete darkness. Cities would need to create their own artificial suns, massive orbital mirrors or giant light towers just to provide minimal illumination. Imagine Times Square or Tokyo, but scaled up to an entire world, glowing with artificial light 24/7. Temperature would also plummet quickly. Within just a week, without enough solar heat, the average global surface temperature could drop below freezing. Skyscrapers, homes, and transport systems would require complete insulation. Streets might be covered in ice, and people would only travel through heated tunnels or enclosed domes. Food would become a huge problem. Agriculture relies on sunlight, and without it, traditional farming would collapse. Cities might move food production underground, using hydroponic farms powered by artificial lamps. Some countries might invest in giant greenhouses covering entire regions, heated and lit by nuclear power or fusion reactors. Even human psychology would change. Without the natural rhythm of sunrise and sunset, people could lose their sense of time. To adapt, cities might simulate fake days, turning lights on and off at set intervals to keep society organized. In this strange new world, survival would depend not on nature, but on how well humanity could engineer its own replacement for the sun. Without the sun's steady energy, Earth's ecosystems would collapse quickly. Plants would be the first victims. Since they depend on photosynthesis, most green life would die within weeks. Forests would turn brown, crops would wither, and the lush jungles of the Amazon would become lifeless husks. Some plants could survive temporarily under artificial lights, but the vast majority would vanish. With plants gone, herbivores would starve, followed by carnivores. Entire food chains would crumble. Imagine African savannas empty of zebras and lions, or oceans without fish because plankton, the base of the marine ecosystem, can't survive without sunlight. Whales, dolphins, and sharks would face extinction within years. The oceans themselves would freeze from the top down. Within months, ice sheets could cover the seas, trapping marine life below. However, deep-sea creatures living near hydrothermal vents might still survive, since they rely on geothermal energy, not sunlight. They could become the last remnants of Earth's biodiversity. Humans might try to rescue some species. Underground biodomes, aquariums, and Noah's Ark projects could be created to preserve animals and plants. But with limited space and resources, only a fraction of Earth's life could be saved. In time, Earth would no longer look like the vibrant blue and green planet we know. Instead, it would become a dark, icy wasteland dotted with artificial oases of light and heat where humans fight to keep life alive. If the sun were smaller than the Earth, the sky would look completely different. Instead of a huge blazing star dominating the day, we would see a small glowing orb, almost like a giant lamp in the distance. Its light would be weak and dim, casting long shadows and never fully brightening the land. Days would look more like permanent twilight, with the sun never able to rise high enough to flood the world with light. Imagine standing outside at noon, yet the sky feels like early evening. Cities would need artificial lights on at all times, and farming would rely on technology instead of natural sunlight. The night sky, however, would be breathtaking. With such little light pollution from the weak sun, billions of stars would shine much brighter than we see today. The Milky Way would stretch across the heavens like a glowing river of light. Planets and distant galaxies would be clearly visible to the naked eye. But this beauty comes at a cost. Without the sun's strong gravitational pull, Earth's orbit would become unstable. Other planets could tug at us, possibly pulling Earth into chaotic paths around the solar system. In the worst case, Earth might drift away into deep space, becoming a frozen, wandering planet. So, while the sky might look magical, it would be a sign of a dying world, one where survival depends more on human ingenuity than on nature. Life under a smaller sun would be unlike anything we know. With so little natural warmth and light, humans would be forced to adapt quickly or face extinction. Cities would transform into glowing hubs of artificial energy, powered by massive reactors or advanced solar collectors that attempt to capture every drop of weak sunlight. Food would no longer come from wide-open fields. Instead, underground farms and high-tech greenhouses would dominate, using artificial lighting and controlled environments to grow crops. Humanity would depend on technology for every meal on the table. The oceans would cool, ice would spread further from the poles, and many species of plants and animals would not survive the drastic changes. Ecosystems would collapse, but some hardy life forms, like deep-sea creatures and microbes, might thrive in this dimmer world. As for human society, it would likely grow more united in its fight for survival. Governments and scientists would race to build massive projects, orbital mirrors, artificial suns, or even giant space stations, to replace what nature had lost. And so, if the sun were smaller than the Earth, our world would not end immediately, but it would be forever changed. Humanity would stand at a crossroads, either fade into extinction under the weak glow of a dying star, or rise together to build a future where we create our own light and warmth. So, what if the sun were smaller than the Earth? We wouldn't just face a colder and darker planet, we would face the ultimate test of survival. Our technology, our unity, and our imagination would decide whether we adapt or vanish into the shadows of a dying world. And if you enjoyed this journey into the impossible, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell, because even stranger what-ifs are waiting just around the corner.